First one is Senate Bill 313 by Senator Edmonds, is enactment Title 17 relative to elementary and secondary education and school choice to authorize the development of the Louisiana Giving All True Opportunity to Rise Scholarship Program. And Senator Miller sends up technical amendments on behalf of the Legislative Bureau and moves adoption of those amendments. Without objection, technical amendments.
Without objection.
Yes.
Senator Edmonds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. We've been working diligently all day long, and in fact, for a couple of weeks on ESA. We're excited about the possibility of what we could do for parents and families in our state. Without saying a whole lot more about that, we want to get some amendments in your hand. So we are ready to. I think we're ready to drop the amendments. And what we're going to do, Mr. President, is let everybody have a look so that they can look at the amendments. And then I'll return it to the calendar, and then we'll move forward after that.
Okay. First set of amendments are by Senator Talbot. They are set number 3314, 3314.
Members, and just to clarify, what we're going to do is we're going to let Senator Talbot's going to introduce the amendment so that they can get to be put online. We won't take any action on the amendments. We'll allow everybody to read them, and then we'll return the bill to the calendar. You can look over the amendments, and later on this evening, towards the end of the day, we'll take the bill back up after everybody's had a chance to look at the amendments. On the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if, I know they're printing out amendments. I don't know if everybody has them on their desk yet, but basically, amendment number 1 and 2 are technical. Amendment number 3 is deleting some language from Representative Julie Emerson's bill. Amendment number 4, we're doing all the definitions of things like what an account means, what an amount of equivalent means, account funds, department, parent, participating school, and so on. That goes all the way to page 2, where in page 2, there's 3 things that has to happen for this ESA to come into fruition. 1, a survey has to be conducted and reported as required in RS 174037.4A. And that survey determines how many kids could possibly be in this program. You know, they have all the criteria for that. Number 2 would be that that Bessie board adopts rules to create this program, I guess you would say. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, the legislature has to appropriate the money. So 3 things have to happen in order for ESAs to come about. So, and again, I don't know if you have the amendments yet, but you will shortly. Page 2 deals with all the rules that the state board, the Bessie board, shall adopt. At the bottom, it talks about the account funds. On page 3, it talks about how things like what are the criteria for funds to be returned, like if they act in a fraudulent way, if they end up pulling their kid out and putting them in a public school, that kind of thing. About midway through page 3, we talk about what's student eligibility, the requirements for a student to be eligible for an ESA. Then page 4, we continue that eligibility. We talk about the participating schools, what makes a participating school eligible. Yeah. And those are things like Broomfield Dodd compliant, which is basically they can't discriminate. All the things pretty much that, if you remember the old voucher school discussions, that would made a voucher school eligible to take the state voucher program and the tax credit voucher program. So page 4 deals with that, the eligibility of the schools to participate in this program. Then page 5, we talk about the students with, if you look on line 16, the students with exceptionalities. Then we also talk about on line 36, the accountability and testing and assessment. So again, with the student with exceptionalities, what qualifies for that, what qualifies for the schools to accept them. And then finally, on page 6, if you look on line 7 all the way to the end, that's just language, line 9 through 21, that makes sure that these people are eligible for TOPS. That's really just TOPS language. And again, amendment number 7, I'll read this part. It says, this section and section 2 of this act shall become effective if and on the date that the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education approves the program by the favorable vote of a majority of the State Board of Education provided by RS 17407.4 in section 1 of this act. So they are restating that all 3 of those criteria that I mentioned earlier all have to be met in order for ESAs to become a reality. So with that, I'll let everybody digest these amendments. I know there are a lot. It's basically Julie Emerson's bill with some changes, and that's it. And I'll yield the floor, Mr. President.
All right, members, now that you have the amendments, if you all wouldn't mind reviewing those, Senator Edmonds, do you want to return the bill to the calendar at this time? We'll return the bill to the calendar, and then we'll follow up with amendments after that. Without objection.
Senator Edmonds now moves for a suspension of the rules for the purpose of reverting back to Senate bills on third reading and final passage and calling up Senate Bill 313 by Senator Edmonds.
Without objection. On your bill.
Senate Bill 313 by Senator Edmonds is enactment Title 17 relative to elementary and secondary education and school choice, authorizes development of Louisiana Giving All True Opportunity to Rise scholarship program.
On your bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. It's an exciting time to think about being able to put this ESA together for all the citizens of the state of Louisiana. I'm going to try to diagram a few things that the bill is about. This bill creates the educational savings accounts for Louisiana families. With this legislation, we'll put the power back in the hands of parents when it comes to their child's education. This program was carried out it will be carried out on a phased basis, and also we'll look at some levels of the way it'll be financed. And as we do that, we'll walk you through some amendments a little bit later. ESAs give parents the flexible options for their child's education, unlike vouchers, which are remitted in whole to pay the full-time tuition and the fees. ESAs allows parents to truly customize their child's education. They receive a deposit of state education dollars into a government-authorized account with restricted but multiple authorized issues. Those funds can cover school tuition. In fact, we prioritize that has to be number 1, and fees and tutoring, educational things to help the child. 14 states have ESA programs: Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, Indiana, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia. As we look at the breakdown, here's the way the students are defined. If a student is from a low-income family, students from families making less than 250% of the 2024 federal poverty guidelines, that's approximately $70,000 for a family of 4. They would be eligible for an ESA up to 80% of the average state and local allocation per pupil, which is what we look at is $7,500. Students from non-low-income families, that's students from families making more than that, that average is about $5,100. And then those with special needs, exceptionalities, the students with IEP, regardless of family household income, they would be eligible for ESA of 160% of the average and local pupil, which is about $15,000. As we look to what the bill would do, and we'll have to look at the amendment in just a moment, but I do want to reference the bill. Some of us are concerned about the financial aspect. How will we afford it and pay for it when it becomes universal? Well, I think we've taken the necessary steps to make certain that we don't put ourselves in jeopardy. I call your attention to the bill about page 5, and you will see that we have placed in the hands of the Department of Education to coordinate with the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to begin by conducting a survey of all existing educational resources available within the state, state funding and their inputs and outcomes, report its findings back to us, the legislature, no later than December the 1st, 2024. The survey shall be categorized by parish, school grade, and as we look at that, it'll be pursuant to RS 1710, public charter schools approved pursuant to Chapter 42 of this title, and non-public schools. It will show us the number of available seats for 24-25. It'll show the number of students enrolled for 24-25, the number of state board approved schools and the 2023-24 school year performance score and letter grade, the number of schools that are labeled urgent in intervention. It will also show the number of students who were enrolled in a C, D, or F school before, rated school for 23-24 school year. The number of students for the 23-24 school year whose family income did not exceed in the bill, that's what I wanted to call attention to on page 5, of the 250% of the current federal poverty guidelines are established by their Federal Office of Management and the budget. Everything about this bill is it's launching of a program. It's taking a look at what we can do, and it's all, as we begin to look at it, it will all be controlled. The spending part of this is all controlled by the legislature. So today, if we take a look at the MFP, and a student leaves the MFP, leaves the state, it really doesn't have any bearing on us in that capacity because the MFP is valued by the number of students participating. So when a student leaves a program and goes into another, you still have the MFP protected by the Constitution. The monies that we elect to spend, that we do on the voucher program right now, is only allocated by the legislature. So it is a controlled number. Bessie will have to work on these numbers to bring back to us the information that we need to make a competent, financial, physically responsible decision. I know that we are looking at how we can make certain that we can take care of the exceptionalities, special ed students. Again, when we begin to look at survey and numbers, we'll look at all of this information as well as those that are in the poverty numbers, and each one of these things will be reported back to the legislature, and then we'll begin to launch now into what will be 3 phases. Phase 1, you'll see in just a moment. I don't want to speak too much about the amendment, but you'll see these 3 phases that we begin in, and that first phase will take our voucher students and begin to move them forward along with some kindergarten children, et cetera. Then you'll see phase 2. The time you get to phase 3, you would be at a universal point to where students then all over the state could be recognized. However, that number will be up to us because we'll have to look at the dollars that we have to do that. So I know we have given some time to look at the amendments, and Mr. President, I'd like to look at adopting the amendments.
Is any objection to Senator Talbot's amendments? See, amendments are adopted. Sorry, next amendments.
Next amendments are by Senator Abraham. They are set number 3318. The next set of amendments are by Senator Jackson. They are set number 3317.
Members, this amendment simply does one thing. It adds the accountability statute that was included in the voucher. since we will be, if this bill passes, since we will be transferring the voucher program into an ESA program, it adds the accountability statutes that are in the vouchers. That's all it does, to have the same accountability as the vouchers did.
Any objections to the adoption of the amendment?
Here's a question.
Will the gentlelady yield to a question by Senator Cloud?
Yes.
Senator Cloud for a question.
Okay, I appreciate what you're doing, and you're right, and I agree with you. But if you look on the amendment on page 5, right here under the accountability testing and assessment, on line 40, we have any examination, because, you know, we're doing away with the LEAP test. So we're going to something different. So we have any examination. Okay. Any examination in English language arts and mathematics required pursuant to the school and district accountability system, which will be the new test at the prescribed grade level. And then if the private school wants to take the norm test, which is basically the private school version of LEAP, it reads a nationally normed reference test or assessment approved by the state board that substantially aligns with the curriculum of the student. So they have the option that the participating school can either do what the LEAP test is going to become, or they can do the nationally recognized norm reference test is what private schools take.
If you look at my amendment, it does not talk about the LEAP test. It talks about, just like when you pass vouchers and you had the accountability in vouchers, it talks about whatever test the state is using.
Actually, I had LEAP test in my bill.
Right, well, it's not.
Bill, so.
I think she made it synonymous to this bill. It deletes the, you had 2 requirements in here.
Either or.
Either or. What I did was make it synonymous to your amendment as far as whatever test is in place, and then added the rest of the accountability requirements from the voucher program. Because right now, what's in the amendment is very much more narrow than what the accountability was in the LEAP
Which
program.
voucher program are you talking about? The state voucher program
Yes.
in yours, or the tax credit voucher program?
Whichever one you're converting to, because that's what the staff gave me. Whichever one you are warping into this ESA bill.
I don't know if they took a particular one and warped it into, they just wrote up accountability
No,
language.
I'm saying
so-
they didn't, and that was the issue, that the accountability language in this amendment is very respectfully, is loose. This was the accountability language in the statute of the voucher programs. So all I did was, but they did tweak it so it wouldn't say LEAP. All I did was take the accountability in the current voucher program and put it in this program. It's the same accountability you passed for vouchers.
So we're going to have to, the private schools are going to get a letter grade? I'm
No,
looking
this
on
is,
Section D here, what
no,
does that mean?
the cohort. In the voucher program, as you passed it, the students that's what cohort means. The students that take an ESA, just like the students that took voucher, those cohorts, not the school, will follow this accountability. And we get that letter grade based on all of the students, just like we do from the voucher right now, from all of the students who select to take ESAs. That has been the accountability for vouchers. This wasn't my language, it was yours.
No, this,
Or whoever drafted
not my
your bill.
language. This isn't in the tax credit voucher bill, this is in the state voucher bill.
State voucher bill,
I didn't have it in mine.
and that's where we get the reporting requirements on how well our students are doing that accepted the voucher program. This is not new language.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this
I
is
got it.
already in the state program.
All right. I don't agree with it, but I see what you're saying.
Well, but, you know, it's what we've been doing.
Okay. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Senator Edmonds object.
On the objection.
On the amendment section that's been offered, I think we are following exactly what we need to do. In that accountability testing and assessment, it specifically says, any examination in English language arts and mathematics required pursuant to the school and district accountability system at the prescribed grade level. So we're exactly in line with where we know that Superintendent Brumley is moving. We know we'll have new accountability standards. Believe this lines up exactly where that's going. And it lists the second criteria, which is what is going on right now in so many of our non-public schools, a nationally norm reference test or assessment approved by the, again, approved by the state board that substantially aligns with the curriculum of the student. This is an amendment that's already in this package of amendments. This accountability was taken care of, and I believe that it's the easiest flowing, not confusing, and will line up in the direction when the ESAs become a part of our law. I think we'll get the exact reporting we need. And I'd ask you to, I do object and ask you to vote no.
Members, I'm sorry.
No, to close on your amendment.
Members, this is the same accountability standard we have. If you look at A, which gives us what we have on the State Department of Education website now, it says on line 6, that it will be promulgated by the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. If you go to the next paragraph, the paragraph after that, but these are the minimum standards of accountability that this legislature has adopted under the voucher program. We can't say on one hand we're merging the voucher program into ESAs, but then drafting loose language of accountability. I think all of us in this chamber want to know how well this program will perform as compared to our previous voucher program when it's merged. This is not my language. This is the language that the legislature passed to give Bessie guidance on how accountability should look while still giving them the authority to promulgate the rules as related to this. So you cannot condense accountability that had 6 paragraphs or 7 paragraphs into 2 and receive the same information regarding how the program is performing. It has worked for vouchers for us to know how well it's performing, and I submit to you this same accountability standard with Bessie promulgating the rules with more specifics on what we're looking for in accountability will work for this program to give this body, as well as our constituents, a true view of how the ESA program will perform. No trick, no language, just putting in the same language. That's it.
Senator Abraham has a question on the amendment? Yes, on the amendment.
So I believe this amendment is very similar to the one I was going to bring. So I want to understand, right now, you said that the voucher system has a certain set of accountability standards.
This is the same accountability standards in the voucher program. This is the same language in the state voucher program. It came directly out the voucher bill to be amended into this bill. It still gives Bessie the leeway to promulgate rules, but this legislature, when we passed the voucher program, we made sure this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points was included with the flexibility that if Bessie changes a test, that they'll promulgate new rules to relate to that test. Okay. If they change anything, but what it does, it doesn't impact, and I think the new amendment, as I read it does, it doesn't impact the entirety of the private school. It follows the voucher program, and it impacts the cohorts, only those students who accept the ESA. That way, we're not interrupting the flow of private schools. We're only saying the only right we have for accountability is those who take the ESA savings account.
No, I get it, and I do I agree with you. What's good for the goose, good for the gander, but as long as it's the same as the voucher program, I think it's good, because in my district, I've heard all along, where's the accountability? Where's the accountability? I hear that all the time. And I talked to Kirk a while ago about his amendment, but I think yours puts it in a better perspective. So thank you, and I'll support your amendment.
Thank you. Yeah, members, it just totally lifts the voucher accountability and puts it in the ESA bill. I'm with Senator Abraham what he says. Everyone's been asking whether you're for or against the bill, where's the accountability? We had the same question when we passed the vouchers. At some point in the state vouchers, this accountability measure was put in the state vouchers. It was crafted to not impact the school itself, but to only give accountability to the students that take the ESA savings accounts. Same thing we did with the voucher. So we wouldn't interrupt the flow or of the private school, but gave the constituents accountability, and parents, let me say this, gave parents of students who accept the voucher program, i.e. now the ESA program, a measure to determine how their students were doing as compared to students who were not accepting the voucher program. So it not only gave us accountability, it gave them accountability, it gave them, the parents of the ESA students or voucher students, accountability.
Senator Jackson has offered an amendment to, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make one point real quick. If you look at page 5 on line 57, aggregate test
Whoa,
result.
hold on, wait, one second. I'm got too many things going on here. Senator Jackson has closed on her amendment, so Senator Talbot cannot have the mic. So that's where we are. So Senator Jackson has offered an amendment to which Senator Edmonds has objected. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yes. All opposed to the amendment will vote no. Madam Secretary, open the machine. Vote your machine, members. Vote your machines. Vote your machines. Senator Stein, no. Senator Kusan, no. Madam Secretary, close machine. 20 yeas and 18 nays. The amendment has been adopted. Next amendment.
No further amendments.
Senator Duplessis for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I want to thank Senator Jackson for her work just now on trying to move this thing in a more positive direction, in my opinion. I think there's clearly a lot of questions and concerns as it relates to ESAs, and I do understand the bill was heavily amended from what it originally started out as, so it's been scaled back, and I believe there will be some limitations on what this program starts out, at least at the outset. But I just want to share some thoughts that I have, not only as a member of this body, but just as a member of the public, as we go down this path of ESAs. When I first started hearing about this concept, I know Senator Edmonds talked about 14 other states that are doing this, and I asked myself the question, what is an ESA? Because I've heard words used interchangeably. I've heard education savings accounts, I've heard education scholarship accounts, but based on what I have learned about this program, I've kind of come up with my own phraseology on what we could call these. ESAs, experimental savings accounts. Experimental because the truth is we don't really know what the success of this is. Just seems like something that's trendy, something that we should do. Maybe, I don't know. ESA, education spending account, because we're not going to save $1 by investing in this. President Henry last week sent us some information on a study that I think at 3 years we'd be looking at $250 million on the conservative side. Maybe we should call them educational spending accounts and not savings accounts. And then the last one I came up with for ESAs was eliminating standards of accountability. Now, I know Senator Jackson put us more in line with what the vouchers are doing there, but there's a lot of questions around accountability even as it relates to the voucher program. So we can't use these fancy terms that sound good and that are trendy without really analyzing what it is that we're doing. To me, members, this is nothing short of an abandonment of public education. We as a state are making the decision and taking the step to say that it's too hard, it's too complex. So we're going to do the popular thing and give the money to the parent. We're going to empower the parent. We're going to empower the taxpayers. We're going to give them their money back. Well, why don't we give our money back for everything else? We pay taxes for the libraries. I want to use my money to go to Barnes & Noble because that's a better way for me to use my dollars. We put money towards public transportation. How about I use it to just take an Uber instead? That's a better way for me to use my dollars. We put money towards police. Can I just hire private security? hire my own. We are abandoning public education. And there's no other way to put it. I want to read some language that's in the bill right now. It's very important because I've been having trouble trying to reconcile this. This is language that's directly from the bill that we're about to vote on. To recognize Article 8, Section 1 of the Constitution of Louisiana requires that the legislature shall provide for the education of the people of the state and shall establish and maintain a public education system. How are we maintaining a public education system? By taking state taxpayer dollars and telling parents, go do what you want with it. Go spend it on private education. Go spend it however you deem fit. How is that maintaining a public education system? Now look, I understand the popularity of it. If I was a parent, I am a parent, and you're telling parents, look, you can take this money, go spend it how you want to, who wouldn't take advantage of that? But what about the system that we are abandoning? I think we need to think harder about this. I really think we need to think harder about this. And the most unfortunate thing, in my opinion, members, is that I think we are in many ways overcomplicating this. Because while we're going to take the great step of moving forward with an untested, unproven, and overly expensive process to do away with public education as we know it, we haven't done the basic thing. And the basic thing is giving teachers the pay that they deserve. If we were a team or sports team owners and we were paying our players a base salary but not winning championships, we would kind of know what the answer is. But yet, year after year, we pay our teachers well below the national average. We're at the bottom, and yet we still wonder why we can't get our education system right. So now we're going to say, let's just hand it over to people who know better than us. I'm not saying parents don't know what's best for their kids. But what I do believe is that this is not a step in terms of fixing public education. And once we go down this path, I don't know how we get back on course. We have an obligation to maintain public education in this state. And again, this is an abandonment of that duty. This is an abandonment of that responsibility. Let's do the basic things right. Let's not go down this path. Thank you.
Senator Boudreau for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to be redundant and repeat what has been said. I do want to take a minute to talk about transparency. Transparency and accountability in the same statement should send a strong message. Since this bill was introduced, school boards across the state of Louisiana have overwhelmingly passed resolutions saying we don't have enough information before we get into the deep end of the swimming pool. We have slowed some things down, but we haven't provided the transparency. We haven't. So I'm disappointed that you have to get an amendment on with 20 votes to say the same thing that's already in statute. And that's why we have trouble with education in this state, because we send in a mixed signal. I don't think anybody's against any charters or anything else, but if we're going to go down that road, then we have to be consistent and be transparent in the application of those rules and regulations. You can't have it both ways. And to object to an amendment that's already in continues down that same bad path. So I'm going to oppose the bill, and I hope we can slow this thing down even more. See, because even if the doomsday prognosis is correct, and this is going to be a great grab on money in the state, we still have a part of the educational community in the public sector that's short right now that we're not going to address. So we can't. No different than crime. You can't protect one side of town and leave the other side unprotected and think your crime rates are gonna be okay. They're not. Let's think about this. Let's make sure before we get too far down the road and the gate closes that we remember when we talk about education, we have to tie accountability and transparency together or we don't move the needle. Thank you.
Senator Morris for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a lot of respect for Senator Edmonds, and his heart is in the right place, and he wants to improve education. And we do have issues with education. However, we do already have school choice in a limited way, because if your child is in a failing school, they have the right to go to a different school. I can't vote for this bill because that choice already exists, and the schools in my district that I'm very proud of, Neville High School, West Monroe High School, West Washita High School, Shudrint High School, Ruston High School, Grant High School, all of them, A and B schools. And for me to vote on something that, not now, because we're not funding it like it was originally envisioned, but the point is at some point in the future to fund it, they're gonna slowly eat away at the economic base of those schools. And that's why I can't vote for the bill, even though I know it is extremely well intended. And I appreciate the author's efforts to try to accommodate the body, but putting our toe in the door with this is going to be back with more and more demands of our revenue that, as everyone agrees, is not going to be what it has been the last couple of years. So thank you.
Senator Mizell for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise to give you an example. I grew up in Bogalusa. They taught Latin to kids in Bogalusa High School. I mean, it wasn't that, Caesar wasn't there, it was a long time ago. There was a feeling in that small community that the kids deserved everything you could give them. It was a blue-collar town. That town now, the public schools are D-minuses. High poverty, high crime, all the bad things are high and all the good things are low. We have one charter school, but we are paying the highest rate per student in the state of Louisiana to a school that has been consistently a D- with high crime and low outcomes. The kids in that town and the parents in that town who want better can't go to the Catholic school or the other private schools in town. It's not an option. That's the decision we're making. They can't, there's no way out without some opportunity that we acknowledge. I don't feel, with all due respect, Senator Duplessis, I don't feel that schools like we're seeing in Bogalusa, we haven't abandoned public education. We've left the responsibility of our children and kind of turned our back and allowed it to turn into what it is today. And I'm fine with accountability, I'm fine with all that, but to say that we're okay in leaving the system the way it is, knowing that we've got kids that are in a downward spiral all over the state in situations like this, it's to me, it's irresponsible, or we're living in a false world not to acknowledge the situation a lot of the kids have. And I know, Senator Morris, when you talk about A-B schools, that's fabulous. That's not a lot of the state, though. So I'm supporting the bill today because I believe these kids deserve a chance.
Senator Talbot for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm sorry if I was out of order when I spoke on her amendment. What I meant to say was, there is accountability in this program because a report is going to be issued to the House Committee on Education and Senate Committee on Education with every test result that a kid who's on an ESA has taken. And we're going to give them two options, either the LEAP test, which is actually going to something, we don't know what that's going to be called yet, or the norm test. The norm test is what a nationally norm reference test that private schools take. To make a private school take the LEAP test would be like making a Louisiana lawyer take the bar in Texas and be expected to pass it on the first try without having opening the book to see what the Texas bar consists of. So that's not really an apples to apples comparison, but I don't want to belabor the point, but you know, I wrote the tax credit voucher bill, I guess it's 10 years ago now, and I remember the debate very vividly. I mean, the things I was called was unbelievable. School choice in this state, we don't have school choice. School choice is determined by your mailbox, where you live. True, if you're going to a failing school, you can go to one that's not, but if you live in Bogalusa, good luck. What are you going to do? You're going to drive 30, 45, 50 minutes to go to school? That's just not realistic. I don't understand the threat that the public school advocates, and look, we're all public school advocates. My entire in-laws went to public school. They were public school superintendents. Why they would lose one single kid if they have a great public school. They will not lose one single kid to that private school system. But, you know, if you read the bill, we're not taking money out of the MFP. We spend $13,000 a year between local, state, and federal dollars to send a kid to the 49th worst public school system in the country, and that has never changed. If that was the LSU football Tiger team, they would fire everyone and start over. I'm not saying we do that, but the numbers are the numbers. We're at the bottom. Let's give people choice. What an ESA is, and look, what this bill does is basically say, the state portion of the MFP average is about $5,400. If you want to go to a public school, you don't get the $5,400. If you want to go to private school, here's $5,400. Go pay that towards tuition. That's what it does. You know, when you look at, you know, what kids like these are going to be eligible? Kids that from families that make 250% or below the poverty level. That's basically a married family of four making about $70,000. So this isn't for the rich. This is for low-income kids. And I remember when I was doing my bill, they said, "Oh, you're doing this just for rich white people." Heck, nobody in my district hardly would even qualify for the state tax credit voucher. And the things I was called, you wouldn't believe the names I was called. And that program is doing very well. We're sending kids to schools with near 100% graduation rates. St. Aug, Shaw, Brother Martin, De La Salle, Jesuit, Country Day, Newman, St. Martin's, all these schools that when you go to that school, you have almost 100% chance of graduating from high school. And I don't need to tell everybody here, if you graduate from high school, your chances of success and going to college and all that just, you know, exemplifies into all good things. And again, if you're a good public school, you have nothing to fear from this. You're not going to lose a single kid. But if you do lose a single kid, that's because, you know, that parent decided that wasn't the school for them. A failing school really, to me, is not defined by a letter grade. It's defined by what the parents believe if the school is failing for that child or not. Maybe they want a faith-based school. Maybe they think the class sizes are too big or too small, or maybe they want this or maybe they want that. But let's let the parents be the ones to choose the school. So I have a feeling that I don't know where Senator Edmonds is, that we might be being able to just think about this bill over the weekend. So just think about it. I know it was a lot of amendments to kind of throw on there. So just keep an open mind. There's other states that are doing this successfully. We're learning from their mistakes, and we're taking this slow. There's an enormous amount of accountability here, so I would just ask you to keep an open mind.
Senator Carter for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, my concern about this is it siphons money away from a public school system and shifts it to private schools. That's a problem because our public school system is failing. So many of our schools are D schools, F schools, barely C schools. And when I hear those letter grades of a D school, of a C school, that's telling us the quality of the education that our kids are receiving. They're receiving failing education, quality education. The solution to that isn't to take money away from the public schools. It's to invest in smaller classrooms. It's to invest in better school pay. It's to invest in before-school programs, after-school programs, to invest in vocational training, to invest in early education. The solution is not to take resources away from desperately needed public schools. This makes no sense. Why would we do that? Why would we take money from schools that desperately need the money? And let me say this. The amount of money that's going to go to a parent, it wouldn't be sufficient under this program to send that child to cover the cost of a private school, private high school tuition, generally speaking, in the city of New Orleans or around the state of Louisiana. It wouldn't be sufficient. And if you look at the language in this bill, what it states is, and I'm reading from this legislation on page 4 at the very top, beginning on line 1, the public education system is established to ensure that every person is afforded an equal education opportunity and prohibits the use of state dollars in a manner that will have the effect of discriminating and providing equal educational opportunities for all students. That's exactly what this does. There are some students that are going to be able to benefit from it because their parents will be able to afford for them to go to that private school. Other parents won't. And as a result of it, those parents, where they have to send their kids to that public school, are going to have less resources for that child. This is discriminatory. It's bad for our public schools. It's going to be harmful to our educational system. I urge you all to vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Foyle for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in support of the bill. We're not lowering the tax basis to school. We're not touching the MFP. If a child goes to a public school, the school system will get the MFP payments for that child. I educated my children in private school and continue to pay my taxes to the public school, and I'll continue to do that. My kids are out of school now. There's no reason why we can't do both. I'm a firm believer in letting the parents make the decision and let the money follow the child, both to the public schools and to the private schools. And let me talk about the children with disabilities. If you have a child with disabilities and he goes to a public school, do you think that money follows that child? No, it's a block grant to the public school system. It doesn't necessarily go to the school where that child is located. Parents with children with disabilities struggle to not only take care of that child, to educate the child. And so if we can give them an opportunity to have choices, whether it's the public school if it suits them, fine. But if not, if there's a better system and this financially helps those who can't afford to move their children to the better place, then I think we should give them that option. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bowie for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill, and I could have offered a number of questions as to why, but decided to take the floor. And I'm just concerned about two issues I'd like you to think about as elected officials that represent the leadership of this state. First one has to do with the fact that what we're about to do is antithetical to what is required by our Constitution, and Senator Duplessis read that to you. And I'm going to read it again because I need each of us to understand what we are being asked to consider. And as a member of this body, we're family. And like all family members, I think we need to be able to tell the truth to each other and make an appeal for each other to stand on why you were elected based on us moving forward this state for all of the citizens. Our Constitution says we are required to provide for the education of the people of this state and shall establish and maintain a public education system. And I want you to think about the things we've done thus far that really is privatizing public education in Louisiana. We just voted to do a piece to end an 18-year experiment where data was presented that showed we need to do something different, but we voted to now legitimize that. That was the privatization of public education, because now we're outsourcing that to a third party. And then I want to talk about our duties as elected officials. And because I'm a member of this family, I'm going to speak to you like family. We are shirking our responsibility. We are shirking our responsibility because in your hearts, you know, your gut is telling you there's something wrong with this. And I have an appreciation for all of the amendments, because that is simply an attempt to water down what we know will not work and will cost us a whole lot of money going forward. Yet somehow we don't have the courage to stand up and do what our people elected us to do, and that is to provide the leadership to ensure that we allow nothing to happen that will ultimately hurt our people. Now, we talk about choice, and I admire what Jay had to say about choice. Yes, we do have choice in this city. In this state, if you don't want to send your kid to public education, then send it to a private school. But the reason we don't do it is because we can't afford it. And it was said that the little money that we're going to give to parents to have the semblance of choice, they won't be able to get into not one private school. And if they send their kid, they'll have to make a loan to do that. We need to be courageous and take a stand and say we know this is not going to work, and do what we say the Constitution requires us to do. Let's work on improving public education. We are not only abandoning public education, we're about to shoot a nuclear bomb. We're going to destroy public education. That's what we're going to do. And I'm here to predict that. And those of you who will be here with us, you will see in less than 3 years before our term is over what this piece will do, what we've done with the legitimization of that approach that has proven not to work after 18 years. You will see us going, we'll stay at 50th in education. So I'm just appealing to you as a family member, as a colleague, as a member of this chamber, have the courage to stand up to those who want to offer something that in the other states they're abandoning this thing. But yet we're going to embrace it and put sugar on it as though it worked. You know in your heart it doesn't work. And I ask you to be courageous.
All right, members, the bill, no one for the floor on the bill, no more questions on the bill. Senator Edmonds.
Members?
Why'd you lock him?
Let's take something that I think would be good for all, to take a little medicine. When we define the word failure, a lot of people have a lot of discussion to do. Easy thing to do now is to make this a debate between public schools and private schools. We can list states that had thousands of children. Not one public system has gone under because someone adopted an ESA. Not one. I'll say it again. Not one. Failure, when we look at that mega word, it says we try something that doesn't work. Experiment, like charter schools. We only have 90,000 students involved in that one. But failure. is to try something that doesn't work. Bad definition. Definition number one for me is failure is to do nothing at all. Am I against the public school system? Nope. I'm a product of the public school system. Some of you in this room can't say that. You had the fortune to go to a private school. I did not. I love my public school education. Blessed. I totally agree. I didn't choose to homeschool my children, but I don't have any qualms with people that select to educate their children in that factor. I love what Senator Duplessis had to say a few moments ago when he made the greatest points for the bill. What a concept. Let parents decide what to do with their tax dollars. Wow. Who would be the better choice to pick for your child? Me? A committee? A government? You wouldn't do that if you were rushing them to the hospital, would you? You wouldn't ask if you had to get them to a doctor, would you? What a concept. We might take tax dollars and give it back to the people. You know? Might just work. I know we're not ready for that today, but since I won't get to do this but a couple of times, I don't know how long I'll be at this platform, but I'll tell you this. I want to tell you a couple of things that I want to end the myth. Number one, I want to tell you this. I don't know how many of you have ever led a non-public school. I don't know how many in this audience of legislators, my colleagues, that I love and appreciate and respect. But I have done that. For years, I've taken the opportunity to try to take children that needed to learn how to read and write and compete and love. I've watched parents with tears in their eyes thank me to say, "You saved my son's life." It wasn't me. It was something that was provided to that child. It gave them the opportunity to excel. There is nothing better than seeing a light go on in the eyes of a child. So I have been in that environment. Some of you think that the non-public school is the Wild West. No accountability. Man, it must be great. Did we know that we have Bulletin 741, that in order to be an approved school in the state that makes certain that children abide by what they're supposed to, that superintendents and principals and those that work in our non-public schools, you know what they have to do? They have to cross a lot of T's and dot a lot of I's in order to make certain that their children stay able for tops and every other thing. So let's don't make this a battle between public and non-public. But I'm going to close with a personal illustration. Because I don't know how many of you have ever, and listen, I'm not better than any of you, and I'm not talking down to any man. I'm just being me. I don't know what it's been like for you to raise your children. I had 4 sons. We talk about special needs and disabilities. I have fought as hard as anybody and joined with many of you. That I thank you for that. But my second son, was born with extreme disabilities. When he was 8 years old, after every surgery that we could possibly do, at the Shriners Hospital in Shreveport, I had to sign the document to amputate my child's leg. Before that, it was a shunt in his head. Before that, it was something else in the back part of his spine. All the way to the life that he's going through right now of still a healthy male with 1 son. Very grateful what medicine and what prayers have done in the Edmonds family life. But I know what it's like to help those children with disabilities because I've lived it and I still live it. And I'm grateful for that. I am blessed and highly favored. Tonight, before we leave this place, I wanted to make certain that I'm just not offering something because I think it's a whim or the latest, greatest, or I'm just going to spot check and say, here's the latest whim in the nation. My heart hurts for the thousands of students in Louisiana that are failing. My heart is heavy tonight for the parents that weep all the way to bedtime and beyond because their children will never get out of the poverty that they're stricken with. My heart is broken tonight because a house can be divided over something that we all agree on, helping our families and dedicating our lives to our children. That's what I signed up for, and that's what you signed up for. So tonight, I'll do what you expect me to do. I'll return the bill to the calendar, and you won't have to vote. But what I will not do, and what I cannot do, is to stop fighting for the children and the parents of the wonderful people that your constituents and mine in the great state of Louisiana. And whatever we've got to do, I ask you to join with me on someday, somehow, somewhere, to change what we're doing educationally in the state of Louisiana. And with that, I return the bill to the calendar. Thank you, Mr. President.
Without objection.